What's going on, everybody? My name is Alex Wilson. I'm my co-host beside me, Anthony Nervato from Fireside Giants, an Empire Sports Media production. You're listening to the Fireside Giants podcast. If you are a diehard Giants fan, you've come to the right place. Make sure to drop a like and subscription below on YouTube. And don't forget to leave a comment. We love to engage with everybody. Now, today's episode, taking a look at how much money the Giants need to sign their 2022 draft class. This is kind of a decision and a situation that is going to determine where the Giants go this offseason, right? With their first round picks, 5th and 7th overall, if you look at kind of guys like Daniel Jones, he's making $4.5 million in his rookie season, or he did rather. That's kind of the number that we're looking at. 6 is right between 5 and 7. So we can expect the Giants to have to pay that for those 2 first round picks, basically $4.5 million a piece, which is a significant amount of money, which is why they're projected to need $16.2 million to sign their 2022 draft class. Now, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how they might get there, the situation in free agency, and how that really hampers their ability to make any additional moves. Before we do so, Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I think something important to note with the Giants' upcoming 2022 draft class is that it's going to be more expensive than your normal draft class. For one reason, the Giants have a lot of draft picks this year. I think they're holding 9 right now. That number could go up, right? The 9 picks that you all have to pay. That's more money than the typical 7 picks. So there's more money involved with that. But of course, the Giants also have 2 top 10 picks. Top 10 picks are the most expensive picks. Like, those contracts are by far the most expensive out of any draft players in the entire draft class. So having those 2 top 10 picks plus 9 in total makes us a more expensive draft class than your usual draft class for the Giants. So I'm curious to see how they're able to free up some cap space, create some room so that they can get all of this class under the salary cap.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, per the NFL PA public records for salary cap, the Giants only have 1.56 million, which is nothing, right? They have no money to spend in free agency. And what does that mean? It means that they have to make additional moves without signing any other players just to open up enough cash to sign their draft picks. Now, how can the Giants get there? We already know that cutting or trading James Bradberry is basically essential. Like, he's gone. We can already write him off. I doubt they cut him. They have interest from the Chiefs. Cutting him would be a very bad decision because there's somebody out there that's looking for a CB1 that will give up a mid-round pick for him. And I think the Chiefs could be that guy. It seems like they're just kind of waiting it out, whether it's an injury or whatever. It's an opportunity for the Giants to get some draft capital. And that even increases the amount they need by just that much. And right now, if you add the $11.7 million that James Bradberry would save, plus the 1.6 million, you're not left with enough to even sign your draft class. So cutting or trading Bradberry isn't even enough to get to 16.2 million, Anthony. So here's a question for you. Joe Schoen has kind of already said that he doesn't want to kick the can down the road. He doesn't want to push money into the future. How can they clear some salary space without restructuring the contracts of Leonard Williams and Kenny Golladay? Those are the 2 big ones. Is there anything else that you have in mind? Of course, Saquon Barkley being traded stands out like a sore thumb, which is definitely, obvious, right? Trading Bradberry and Barkley makes the most sense if you don't want to push money down the road. But do you think that there's a world where they keep Barkley, trade Bradberry, and restructure some of those contracts and kick it down the road? I know we have a lot of money next year, but still, I don't think Shane necessarily wants to do that. What do you think is the more probable of the 2?
Yeah, unfortunately for the Giants, they've kind of already exhausted all of their options in terms of creating cap space. They already restructured Sterling Shepard. They already restructured Blake Martinez. They cut a whole bunch of players, Riley Dixon, Devontae Booker, a whole bunch of players that were even key contributors, Kyle Rudolph as well. So now they're at this point where they're going to have to just get rid of good talent. And James Bradberry, trading him, I believe, frees up around $12 million. But as you're mentioning, they're still $4 million short on getting their draft class under the salary cap. And then, of course, you don't want to go in with $0 into the regular season. You want some money in case of an injury and you have to sign a free agent through the waiver wire or whatever. So the Giants are in a really tough spot here where they kind of have to make these difficult decisions. And James Bradberry should be the first to go here. But Saquon Barkley, day by day, seems more difficult to imagine how they're able to fit his contract under the salary cap. Now, in all real reality, I don't think they're going to trade Saquon. I do think he's going to remain on the roster. I do think that James Bradberry is a goner, though. Brian Dable was talking recently about how excited he is to coach Saquon Barkley, how excited he is to get Saquon Barkley more involved as a receiver. So I think they're pretty confident in their future with Saquon Barkley, at least for this year. But you take a look at the roster, there aren't that many more players to cut without making serious sacrifices or making restructures, as you just mentioned, with Leonard Williams, with Kenny Galladay. These are things that the Giants might have to do. Dave Gettleman unfortunately put the Giants in a really difficult position because he signed some contracts with some players that, really gave them a lot of flexibility for restructures, but then they used all that flexibility and now the Giants' hands are tied. So all the restructures that Dave Gettleman did during his tenure with the Giants is really coming back to bite the Giants right now. And I don't really know how they're going to be able to maneuver this cap space to free up over $16 million. Probably they need to free up about 20 by the time the regular season rolls around because they got to get all of the free agents, all the draft class under the salary cap, and then also need to save room for free agents during the regular season in case of injury. So it's going to be really difficult, but hopefully Joe Shane can get the job done.
Right. And in one of the best ways to supplement big contracts is rookies. There are three guys that come to mind the Giants could save money with. And I'll list them out. And I want you to tell me if you think that it's worth cutting them or worth keeping them. The first one being Nick Gates, right? Nick Gates is set to earn $3 million this season. If they cut him, they can save $2.1 million. That's a pretty nice chunk of change for a player who nobody really knows if he's ever going to return to normal. He had a little setback recently, I believe. I doubt he makes even an impact if he plays at all this season. So that's a major concern. What are the Giants do with a guy like Nick Gates? Do you cut him, save the $2 million, and draft a mid-round center or a guy that's kind of flexible? That seems like a realistic thing, Anthony. Do you think that cutting Nick Gates could be in the cards? I know it's not the best thing in the world because he's a fan favorite, but unfortunately it is a business and he is coming off a significant injury and he is being paid a nice chunk of change to basically make no impact this year. So, what do you do there?
I think that that's really difficult to say. I don't know if it's in the best interest of the Giants to cut a player like Nick Gates, who's coming off of that injury, just because it's not a good look, right? Like from a PR perspective, from the perspective of the Giants are a high class organization that treats their fans and players both with equal amount of respect. They probably shouldn't make that move just because he is dealing with a gruesome injury. He's already had a setback in his recovery process, which is super unfortunate for Nick Gates. I hope to see him back out there in a Giants uniform one day. If it's unrealistic, then, it's unrealistic and it won't happen. But I don't think it's a good idea for the Giants to cut him and let him go through his rehabilitation process on his own. I think that they should just keep him around. I don't know, figure out the contract somehow, but they should definitely help him through his medicals at the very least if they do decide to cut him. So I don't know if it's just a really good idea from a PR perspective to cut Nick Gates. I mean, the guy is like basically dealing with a career-threatening leg injury. It's pretty gruesome. So, and again, hoping that he gets recovered soon enough so that he can return to the field, hopefully within the next year.
Right. I think maybe the better course of action, because you kind of got to find a way to save a little bit of money there. He's not going to give you any value this year. Maybe restructure his contract. Maybe ask him to take a pay cut and say, hey, we really don't want to cut you, but we need this money. And are you willing to do this for the betterment of the team? Or maybe build in some incentives. If you make, if you play, I don't know, if you play in 2 games or if you make this many starts or if you have this many snaps, you get a nice bonus, right? Like maybe that's something that the Giants could consider doing with Nick Gates to lower that cap hit. The next player that I do have in mind is Julian Love. If I love Julian Love, great depth piece. The Giants just, released Logan Ryan, so they're down a safety. They only have Xavier McKinney and Love on the roster, but Love is projected to earn $2.7 million this upcoming season. They can save $2.5 million by releasing it. That's another nice chunk of change. You could make the argument that replacing Love with a draft pick in the mid rounds is also something that's realistic. Somebody that better fits the scheme of Wink Martindale. Julian Love is a good zone cover corner. I don't really trust him in man coverage, but I think he fit really well in Patrick Graham's scheme. I don't know if he's going to be the best option for Wink Martindale's system and scheme. So that's somebody to consider. Do you think that Julian Love may be a guy that could be on the bubble there in terms of saving some salary space? I don't think he will be because I think he does have value and the Giants are running out of safeties pretty quickly. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think cutting Julian Love is a really bad idea. I would not do that personally if I were the Giants because I think that he does provide tremendous depth and he actually is in line probably to play a starting role at this point because the Giants have already cut Logan Ryan. Jabril Peppers is gone. The safety position is kind of grim right now for the Giants, and I don't think that they can afford to lose Julian Love's talents, honestly. And, even though they'd be freeing up $2 million or so, I mean, who is going to replace Julian Love's production value with $2 million, right? That $2 million, I think, is better spent paying Julian Love rather than paying other rookies to hopefully develop into what Julian Love is. Because Julian Love is a solid player. He is a quality starter, and he's able to play multiple positions, gives the Giants a lot of flexibility and a lot of depth on the back end of their defense. I really like Julian Love. I don't think cutting him for that $2 million would really be a beneficial move for the Giants.
Right. And, I do agree with you. I think that if you're looking at it in context, though, with this year, Julian Love, I think he's going into his fourth season, so he'll be a free agent after this year. Maybe it's better, you're better off, maybe even trying to trade him to a team that
Maybe
could actually
extending
use
him.
him,
You could maybe extend him since
maybe
this is his
extending
final year
him.
of his contract.
Right. You could extend him for some money to another season. They have a lot of money next year. He's not going to be an expensive guy, that's for sure. Alternatively, you could draft a safety that better fits the system. I don't think that Julian Love has great sideline to sideline speed. I don't think he has the ability to cover the whole back end of the field as a single high safety, but he is a very solid safety when you're talking about intellectual and talking about football IQ. He's really, really good at recognizing plays and understanding the system. So I think that he does offer a lot of value in that sense. But if you're looking to get a mid-round pick who's going to cost $800K or $1 million, you're saving $1 million, and he's a developmental guy and he's there for the next 4 years, maybe that's something the Giants will do. So interesting, but I agree with you, Anthony. I don't think that releasing him would be in the best interest of the team. The last player I do have in mind is Darius Slayton. This is a guy who I legitimately think could be cut. They would save $2.5 million by cutting him. His dead money is $58,000. Darius Slayton has been plagued by drops throughout his career. I know the Giants don't have a ton of playmakers, but I do think that they're going to draft a receiver in the mid rounds. Like we've looked at Sky Moore out of Western Michigan, really, really big on him. There's a couple, Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. Dude is an absolute beast. Athleticism is off the charts. So, when you're looking at some mid round picks, they could probably offer better stuff than Slayton up to this point, immediately. I know Slayton has chemistry with Daniel Jones, but it doesn't really matter because they're redoing the whole scheme and system anyway. Do I like Darius Slayton? I think he's a good speed guy. I think he can run some routes, a couple of routes nicely, some decent comebacks, some decent 9 routes, but ultimately he's dropped too many footballs to rely on him as a legitimate number 2 or even number 3 option at this point. You don't see guys that start on NFL teams, good NFL teams, that drop as many passes as he does. So saving $2.5 million, I think, would be a pretty easy decision for me, Anthony. What do you think?
I don't know, man. I also think that this one's difficult because I think that Darius Slayton has a good connection with Daniel Jones. I think that he's a pretty decent player, and I don't think that the Giants have enough depth at wide receiver to be cutting a starter right now, personally. I mean, if they're going to make a drastic change, trading Kenny Galladay so that they can free up cap space and just rebooting and really just throwing this season away, which, I mean, they kind of should do anyway. Maybe not the trading Kenny Galladay part, but throwing the season away. You just mentioned it. They're not a good team. They're not a good team at all. So letting Darius Slayton go also probably isn't the worst idea. I just think that it's kind of difficult from the perspective of the Giants to take basically the last bits of talent that they have to pay on this roster and just throw it away and replace it with only 9 draft picks. I mean, yeah, 9 draft picks is a lot of draft picks, but it's only 9 draft picks to try and replace Darius Slayton, Julian Love, Saquon Barkley, James Bradbury. I mean, you just run up the list of positions and players that they need to fix. It's not realistic to do it with 9 draft picks. And also, if we want to add more draft picks, that means adding more money. So it becomes really difficult. One of the other solutions, the contrary solution, right, the contrarian solution that I'll throw out there is the Giants could trade some of their draft picks away. Right? They could trade some picks to get picks for next year. So they don't have to spend money on this year. They could spend the money next year on draft picks. That's always a possibility. Or maybe they trade some of these late round picks for some really cheap veteran minimum contract players, right? That's also a possibility. So keep that in mind. But with Darius Slayton, I think it's just difficult to say that he can just get cut that easily because, again, he has good value, and I don't know if the Giants are really going to match his production level with a mid-round pick. And of course, I know he's got a lot of drops. He's been very inconsistent and shaky, but he's also had a couple 100-plus yard receiving games and some touchdowns and some big catches down the stretch for Daniel Jones and the Giants. So it's kind of hard to imagine that you're going to cut Darius Slayton at a very important position, and one that's honestly at this point kind of a position of need, wide receiver, and replacing his production level in the middle rounds with a draft pick. I'm just not so sure if it's realistic.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, look, Darius Slayton does serve a specific purpose. He's a burner. He can get downfield. He's good at exposing some coverages. So I think that maybe if you're looking at Brian Dable and Mike Kafka, they might be able to get the most out of Darius Slayton. But alternatively, the dude drops a lot of footballs, and I don't know if they can fix that problem. They've been trying to fix it for 4 years, and I don't think that he's made much progress, which is kind of the reason they let Evan Ingram go this year. So I don't exactly know if his value matches his price tag after last season. I don't know if keeping him around is worth it. I do think that if the Giants are looking at a mid-round receiver and they think that they can get some good value out of him, and they're like, we're going to draft the receiver in the mid-rounds, they're dead set on it, I don't see why cutting Darius Slayton, would hurt the team. I don't see why saving the money isn't a good thing. But ultimately, like you said, wide receiver is kind of thin at the moment. The Giants did bring back David Sills. So, I mean, he's more of a practice squad guy, but, everyone always kind of wanted him to get a chance. But I'm very curious to see what the Giants do. Obviously, the draft coming up in a couple of weeks here. A lot's going to be going. A lot's going to be talked about. The Giants did go to the pro days of Sauce Gardner, cornerback out of Cincinnati, and Kayvon Thibodeau. So two very, very interesting players. It seems like they're very interested in both of those guys. And I think that with the 5th or 7th overall picks, they're going to take whichever one lands in their lap. And of course, the offensive tackles are a big one too. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, taking a look at the current Giants salary situation, how much they will need to sign in their 2022 draft class. I'd love to hear what you think about the 3 players that I did list, and Nick Gates, Darius Slayton, and Julian Love. Do you think that cutting them makes sense, saving the money? Who do you think that we should keep? Always curious to hear your opinions in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'll catch you guys on the next one.